Okay, so what if you could buy an entire empire? I'm not talking about conquering it. I mean literally purchasing it, like you're at some high-stakes auction. Well, believe it or not, back in the year 1903 AD, that's exactly what went down in Rome. And this is basically the receipt. Take a close look at this coin. It's a Roman sestertius. You can almost feel the history in it, right? I mean, just imagine all the hands this thing has passed through. Senators, merchants, soldiers. But its real story, its true story, is way more incredible than you can imagine. This little piece of metal, it was a silent witness on the day the Roman Empire was put up for sale and sold. I mean, it sounds like a totally absurd question, doesn't it? How much is an empire worth? You'd think that's just some hypothetical you'd never get an answer to. But back in 193 AD, there was a very real, very specific price tag. So, yeah, let's do it. Let's jump back in time and find out exactly what it cost to buy the most powerful empire on Earth. Okay, so our story kicks off right in the heart of the empire, Rome. The year is 193 AD, and things are messy. It's known as the Year of the Five Emperors, which should tell you everything you need to know. The whole city is basically a tinderbox of politics and ambition, just waiting for a spark. And here's that spark. The emperor, a guy named Pertinax, makes a huge mistake. A fatal one, actually. He tries to get his own bodyguards, the super elite Praetorian Guard, under control. Well, they weren't having it. Their response was, let's just say, swift and brutal. They storm the palace, and that's the end of Pertinax. And just like that, the most powerful job in the world is open, and the only real power in the city belongs to the guys who just murdered the emperor. So what do these guys do next? This is where the story goes from a political thriller to something just unbelievable. They don't just pick a new emperor. No, they decide to sell the job to whoever offers them the most money. That's right, they literally held an auction for the Roman Empire. I mean, just try to picture the scene. It is completely absurd. Inside the Praetorian camp, you've got the murdered emperor's father-in-law, a man named Sulpicianus, trying to make a deal. But then this other super wealthy senator, Didius Julianus, shows up outside the walls. They won't even let him in. So what does he do? He starts shouting his bids over the wall. Seriously. Sulpicianus offers 20,000 sesterces for every soldier. Julianus, from the street, yells back 25,000. Now, for a regular guard, that was like 10 years' salary. So yeah, deal. The empire was sold. So, what's the grand total? What's the final price tag for the Roman Empire? Well, there were about 8,000 soldiers in the Praetorian Guard. You multiply that by 25,000 sesterces each, and you get a mind-boggling 200 million sesterces. To give you some perspective on that, we're talking about a huge chunk of the entire state's yearly income. It's just an unbelievable amount of money. And you know, this isn't some tall tale made up centuries later. A historian named Cassius Dio, he was a senator in Rome at the time. He saw this whole shameful business go down with his own eyes. And you can just feel the disgust in his words. The empire wasn't conquered in some epic battle. It was auctioned off like a piece of junk. So you've got to be wondering, who was this guy, Didius Julianus? Who has the cash and the nerve to just buy an empire? Was he just some rich idiot? A greedy fool? Well, this is what I find so fascinating. The real story, it's way more surprising and a whole lot more complicated than you'd think. Just look at his resume. Seriously, it's a highlight reel of how to succeed in Rome. He was born into a big-shot family. He was raised in the Emperor Marcus Aurelius's mother's house. He was a successful general, a respected consul. He governed some of the most important provinces. This guy had climbed all the way to the top of the ladder. He wasn't some nobody. He was the establishment. And that's the real mystery here, isn't it? This is a man who spent his entire life building this stellar reputation for service and honor. So why? Why would he just toss all of that in the trash for a crown he had to know was tainted from the start? Well, as you can probably guess, things did not go well for Emperor Julianus. His reign was a total disaster right from the get-go. He quickly found out that while you can buy the title, you can't buy actual power or respect. I mean, the second he took the throne, his world just completely unraveled. The people of Rome, they hated him. They'd yell insults, even throw rocks at him in the streets. To pay off that huge debt to the guards, he had to devalue the currency, which wrecked the economy. And then came the knockout punch. 3 powerful generals out in the provinces, each with a huge army, all declared themselves emperor. Suddenly, Julianus was trapped. So the stage was set for a massive civil war. The problem for Julianus was his Praetorian Guards, the guys who put him in power, were basically parade soldiers. They were no match for the tough, battle-hardened legions that were now marching straight for Rome. His attempts to defend the city were, well, they were a complete farce. His Praetorians had no clue how to build proper forts, and then, you can't make this up, he decided it would be a brilliant idea to use circus elephants as weapons of war. The elephants, not surprisingly, disagreed. They panicked and threw their riders off. His entire defense was a joke, and the punchline was getting closer by the day. And after all that, this is what his ambition got him. 66 days. That's it. He bought the most powerful job in the world, and it lasted him just a little over 2 months. As the army of his rival, Septimius Severus, got close to Rome, the very same Senate that had declared him emperor now sentenced him to death. A single soldier found him hiding in the palace, and his last words, according to Cassius Dio, were just confused. But what evil have I done? Whom have I killed? It's like, even at the very end, he just didn't get it. So, what's the final verdict on Didius Julianus? How do we remember him? Is he a calculating villain, or just a pathetic victim of his own ambition? Well, as it turns out, history gives us a few different ways to look at it. First, you have the villain theory, mostly from Cassius Dio, the guy who saw it all. For him, it's simple. Julianus was just an insatiable money-getter, a greedy opportunist who disgraced Rome for his own personal gain. End of story. But then there's another historian, Herodian, who paints a different picture. He saw Julianus more as a fool, a kind of pathetic figure who wasn't really the mastermind, but was pushed into the whole thing by his super ambitious wife and daughter. And finally, there's this lesser-known source, the Historia Augusta, that gives us a more sympathetic view. It suggests maybe he was pressured by the guards, that he was actually pretty frugal in his personal life, and that he was just unfortunate, a guy caught up in a political mess that was way bigger than him. And that brings us back to this coin. Because in the end, it's so much more than just a receipt for a shady deal. It's a symbol of total institutional decay. It marks the moment the very soul of the empire was sold, and it set a terrible precedent. This was the beginning of the army deciding who got to be emperor, a problem that would nearly tear Rome apart. You see, Didius Julianus wasn't the disease. He was just the symptom. Ultimately, the story of Didius Julianus is a lesson that's just as relevant today as it was 2,000 years ago. He learned the hard way that you can buy the title of emperor, but you can't buy real power. And it leaves us with a really big question, one that echoes through history. What is the price an empire pays when it loses its soul? If you found this story as fascinating as I do us a favor and hit that like button. And hey, subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into these incredible moments from the past. Thanks for coming along on this trip back to ancient Rome.